Hey folks, it's Ben. I finally have a camera that has full power. That's handy. And a mostly empty video slot. So probably keep this one rolling live while we do it. We're putting a bearing into a 2008 Chevy Uplander. Here's the old bearing, which is worn out, so that's why we're getting rid of it. Another side project, I don't know if I'm going to record it. I need this for the rear bearing. But anyway, so here's my bearing. Beautiful, cute, and new. But first things first, we got to clean this, which I've already actually done on the taking out part. But next what I'm going to do is get the paint out. What are we painting it with? Edit to awesome. Anti-seize / thread lubricant. I like this stuff because when I have to come back and take anything apart, I can. Now I'm from, originally, the state of Maine. They salt their roads up there, and if your car is over 5 years old, your car is old. The salt just gets to everything, and so as parts wear out, and thanks to state inspection, they do whether they're worn out or not, everything is rusted and impossible to get off. So, through the severe beating of Maine winters and salt, I put anti-seize on everything. Now, in theory, good thread practice says, unless I'm really dealing with a rotational part, and we kind of are here, but not to the nth degree, you don't need Loctite, right? Now, if it's vibrations or rotation or things are involved, then absolutely. Loctite has its place. But in suspension parts, and because of the state of Maine, things wear out quickly. It seems there's always something worn out. I'm always in here, the suspension. And having everything lubricated with a non-corrosive thread lubricating properties just makes sense. So that's what I'm doing here. Is every surface that touches another surface that'll have to come apart, we're going to put thread sealant on. Now I live now in sunny Alberta, Canada. They mostly don't salt the roads here, which means that this car here is not only rust free, actually relatively free to come apart. It wasn't actually gross to do. I have been hurt by better bearings than these. So that being said, I don't have to go cray-cray, but that I'm also not dumb. And we're going to coat everything with anti-seize anyway. No harm done. And the next sucker who does this job, and I'm willing to bet it'll probably be me, either for my mother-in-law again, or we'll have that van, or whatever, or the next sucker who owns the van that has to do this job, we'll have her done. Now the only place I'm not going to go crazy or even do is the thread nut. I'm going to figure that out, but right now, no. So all these surfaces are done. This is where my brake bolt's on too. I'm now going to do all the threaded bolts, and there's these 310s, I'm sorry, these are 13s, these are 15s, and that's all we actually have for bolts to do here. But I'm going to go do those now, and then we're going to assemble this whole thing. Let's do this. That code for me to kick off the slow-mo and get this thing back in the line. Alrighty. Now, this does have an orientation, obviously. It's got to follow the 3 holes, but the ABS sensor points up, and it kind of squeaks out the top here. So as I move this thing over, I squeeze the ABS sensor through the hole without wrecking it. Because if you wreck your ABS sensor, you're also out of bearing. That's not cool. Alright. Now, that should... Going to want to key in right, or it's not going to line the holes up with the bearing on the shaft, because it is in park. There we go. Oh yeah, beautiful. Like so. So my ABS sensor's out. Now we're ready to start putting our bearing bolts in. Those are the smaller 13mm units. Okay, so we got the 3 bolts in, but don't be like me and forget that you actually took this plate off too, which holds the ABS sensor and a little protector for it. So now I'm going to go ahead and take this bearing back off and put this plate back on, and then we're going to cut to where we are now that I've forgotten I have to put this thing on. And through the magic of awesome, editing, I've got a magic plate here. So what keyed me off is I needed to plug this ABS sensor into this little bracket, and then the car's ABS sensor clicks in from the bottom, making an ABS seal. There is a hole enough here that the drive can spin and not hurt the ABS, which hangs out here to get hit by rocks. Now, I got to tighten these things down. I'm sure there's a specific torque rating, but what I've discovered is that there are 3 levels of torque. Kind of tight, really tight, and effing tight. These are effing tight. So don't fear the reaper on these. Put them on there so that they are really in there tight. Our anti-seize is going to make them so they're not impossible to get off, right? But this will make sure that this bearing is not going to come off. It'll be nice and secure the whole trip. And after fact, hopefully you watch the video before you do it, be careful. You do have a rubber boot here, so you don't want to cut it or maim it. A lot of ratchets are smooth on the top, not an issue. But just if you have an old ratchety one, it's got sharp edges, be careful not to hurt that boot. Next we have up is the drum. Wow, that's old school. Disc. With our one, here it is, machined hole. And here's our machined hole on our bearing. So it rests like this, but after I paint each surface so they don't glue together. Oops. I guess that's good for that. It holds it on there. Now let's drop the brake caliper on here. Once they're kind of screwed in, I'm going to come in with the big 15. And these are also effing tight. Because of the rotational nature of this nut, I do not put anti-seize on it. It's a special nut anyway, designed to be kind of a locking nut without a washer. So it comes off hard regardless. I think I've done them in the past. This is going to do 2 things. It's going to draw the shaft into the bearing, which is important. I learned that on my Fiero. If you don't torque this enough, your bearing's like, this bearing is loose. It's not the bearing, it's the drive shaft in the bearing that's loose. Now, if I needed to put a metal shaft in here, I'd put the lug nuts on. And that would keep it from damaging the nuts. When you're taking it off, you don't care, because you're replacing all those studs. But in this case, you're keeping them. So, excuse me, you'd want to protect those with the actual lug nuts on the studs. Ooh. Now, I'm going to go freaking tight on this one too. Just because it's on my Fiero, I think it was torqued to like 40 or something, and as soon as you torqued it down to 100 it was great, but at 40 it just sucked. You could feel the wiggle in the bearing. Alright, that's technically it. The drive nuts on, brake nuts are on. It's not a lot to a bearing. They're pretty modular nowadays, but you know, it's important to do them right and make sure they're tight. Okay, I'm going to leave that at that for now. One thing I'm going to do while I'm here is I got dirt all over. Now, if I were in Maine, I would put anti-seize on the rotor too, because I've had wheels bond to this, but here in Alberta, not an issue. Also, different summer wheels and winter wheels on this car, so they're off every other 6 months or so, or 8 months, so they get rotated enough, it's okay. So there you go. I'm going to mount my wheel, my mounts, put her down and take her for a test drive. But that's how you change a bearing on a 2008 Chevy Equinox. No, it's not an Equinox. I have an Equinox. Uplander. Thanks.